Hello. Today we are going to talk about who you are and how who you are affects things like conflict and cooperation. Now, in order to understand who you are, psychologists use a term called identity to refer to the relationship between you and your social groups. Now, what does identity mean? It is basically your perception of who you are in terms of that group. Now, we all have lots of identities. Of course, my name is Mark, but as far as my identity is concerned, I have an identity as a son. I have an identity as a husband, as a friend, as an American, as someone who lives in Kansas, as a Kansan, and so on, right? I have all these different affiliations, and these affiliations mean something to me, and they're relevant in a particular social context. One way of thinking about identity is to think about it in terms of categories. Something called categorization theory explains that for us. Our mind likes to divide the world into categories so as to simplify the world, and our social groups are indeed relevant categories to this. It suggests that we are members of many groups simultaneously, that we have a tendency to shift from one group to another, depending on the group's salience. Salience means visibility or relevance to a particular situation. My perceived membership in this group means that I may believe that I have a lot in common with other people in that group. If I'm a Republican, I may believe that I have a strong affiliation and beliefs with a lot of other Republicans. Same if I was a Democrat, of course. Even my affiliation with sports teams is particularly relevant. I might not know any members of the Kansas City Chiefs personally, but because I am a Chiefs fan and I believe in the Kansas City Chiefs no matter how well or how poorly they might be doing in a given season, I might be more willing to affiliate myself with the Chiefs team and Chiefs players. Also, whatever identity is most salient at the time may determine what your behavior is based on the situation. Let's say, for example, you're a soldier. If you're in the battlefield and an enemy is charging you, what is the behavior that is implied from that particular group membership? Well, you shoot at them. If you walk into a voting booth, one would hope that that soldier identification doesn't hang in there and you start shooting poll workers. The idea, the hope is anyway, that you'll look at that situation and realize, no, I am a Republican or I am a Democrat, I am an American, I'm going to go into this polling booth and I'm going to cast my ballot accordingly. When you go to other countries, the salient identity may be your affiliation as an American. People say, where are you from? You say you're an American. It's almost the first thing that comes out whenever you're traveling abroad. This is significant in three ways. First of all, whichever of your identities is most salient may be the one that you're more likely to act upon. For example, if you are a Palestinian living in Israel, chances are you do not even have an Israeli identity. You have a Palestinian identity or an Arab identity or even a Muslim identity, and that might affect how you behave, and certainly it wouldn't necessarily be in accordance with what it is that Israeli authorities want you to do. Second, a lot of psychology suggests that we don't like to talk to people who have different opinions than we do. And so it creates a barrier, if you will, to a lot of discussion and a lot of cooperation. Third, we don't even necessarily have to know somebody in order to feel affiliation with them. Like I said, if I feel strongly about the Republican Party, I may trust George Bush before I trust some of my friends who happen to be Democrats. Those groups that I belong to, we can call ingroups, and those groups which I do not belong to, I can refer to as outgroups. And something called social identity theory suggests that there is a likelihood for in-group favoritism and out-group discrimination. Experiments have indicated that it takes virtually nothing in order to set up a potentially discriminatory situation. I could take a group of people and randomly divide them into different groups and simply give them titles, your group and other group, and then give them money to divide amongst themselves in which they would not personally benefit from that division, and they are still more likely to give to their in-group and not give to the out-group. Now, this is one thing to just sort of say in a laboratory, but if you think about the potential for in-group and out-group discrimination once you have well-established groups that are strongly socialized, things that have to do with your nation-state affiliation, your sports team affiliation, your ethnic group affiliation, all of a sudden you can have a recipe for conflict and cooperation depending on where your affiliation is. And let's not downplay even the smaller levels of identification. If you have the University of Kansas having a game with K-State or something like that, two strong rivals, and they show up in the same city, it's quite possible, in fact it's certainly happened a number of times, where the losing team is going to do something terrible to the cars or start fighting bars or whatever, even though they don't necessarily know the person, and even though there may be a similar demographic, like maybe they come from the same sort of town, or maybe they have the same faith and same religion. There are practical manifestations of this. First of all, if somebody's physical security is threatened, they may turn to their in-group for protection. They may be more likely to want to protect that. Think about it. Passenger planes wrecked the World Trade Center, killing about 3,000 people. The likelihood of this happening to anybody else is not extremely great. However, all of a sudden, because a few Americans die and people affiliate with Americans, people are more likely to be worried about the fact that they're going to die in some sort of a terrorist attack. Second, people can be and are ostracized for not being part of the group, and there may be physical punishments and rewards for conforming. Finally, children learn at an early age. They become socialized into these groups. And so it's not just a matter of receiving information and determining whether or not this information is relevant. Because they love their groups, as we've discussed before, they're going to be more likely to trust those groups. However, it also means that whatever norms there are as far as who you should hate and who you should love is also transferred, and that in-group, out-group discrimination becomes an even more powerful force.